Defense contractors could get more time to comply with a rule that bans the use of certain Chinese telecommunications products. The current waiver goes until the end of the month. Gordon Bitko is Senior Vice President of Policy at the Information Technology Industry Council. He's former Chief Information Officer at the FBI. Gordon, thanks for coming on the program. Is this extension likely to happen, do you think? And is it a good idea or a bad idea, in your view, for the companies that are trying to comply with this and keep doing business with the Pentagon?
First, Francis, thanks for having me back again to talk about this. It's a critically important issue. There are real needs to protect national security, and of course, industry wants to do what it can to work with the government in that regard. I think the discussion of the extension is a reflection of the understanding of the complexity of the rule. Many agencies are right now trying to figure out exactly what it means. The rule left a lot uncertain, and a lot of individual agencies are figuring it out for themselves. And so there's a realization that that's a real challenge. If different agencies are handling this differently, that's going to really increase the cost, the complexity, the challenges for compliance. And so I think a lot of people are looking at that and saying an extension is necessary to really figure that out. But I also want to be clear, what we're talking about is not every agency has filed for waiver requests for this extension. And to date, individual agencies such as the Department of Defense have received it, but others have not and have not filed for that waiver. And so what that means, again, is there's going to be uncertainty unless, in response to the comments to the rule, which were just submitted yesterday, the FAR Council decides to enact a broader extension for everybody.
Does that make sense at some point for somebody to say, maybe it's at the OMB level or some other level, to say, we're going to do it this way, at least maybe we're going to do it this way for all the civilian agencies, and let the Defense Department decide on its own, or something like that? Would that give the vendor community a little bit more certainty? It sounds like the uncertainty is the biggest challenge that they have right now.
That's absolutely right, Francis. I think the uncertainty is a real challenge for everybody, and that's true within government agencies as well. We've met with a number of agencies discussing how they're planning to roll this rule out, and they have all almost uniformly said to us, please make sure you submit comments highlighting these issues that you're having, because we need clarity on them as well. So it's not just clarity for industry, it's clarity for contracting officers across government, and that covers a really wide range. Think about for a second, Francis, right now you've got firefighters for the Department of Interior who are out there, in the West fighting fires. It's a critical need. Everybody understands that and supports it. From time to time, they have to buy supplies, and the way they do that is with a government credit card, right? They go to the local hardware store and they buy equipment. Well, none of those companies that they're buying from, those local little stores, have gone through the process of representing that they do or don't use any of the covered equipment. Are firefighters going to be able to continue that critical need going forward or not? There's no clarity on that. You can add that on to all sorts of other mission essential functions. FEMA, when they respond to hurricanes, they sometimes have to do similar things. Same challenge exists for them. So I think this need for clarity exists across the whole of government.
What argument is there, if any, for different agencies to do it differently? Is there a pro to that approach? Sounds to me so far like it's all cons, and it's generating that lack of clarity that we just discussed, but it's possible there are reasons that it makes sense to continue that effort.
What we would really like to see, Francis, is a recognition that the risk is different, right? The risk of different types of exposure, different types of data that different agencies have, that contractor equipment or services might have access to, varies depending on, are you supporting the Department of Defense or the intelligence community, or are you supporting FEMA or the Department of the Interior or the Department of Education? That's a very wide range. And the reality is that this rule and Section 889 is so stringent in its interpretation, it's not allowing for any flexibility in thinking about the risk. What we'd really like to see is that approach. And that cuts not just to 889, Francis, but there's a lot of other, as we've talked in the past, policy in the same space. For example, the FCC right now is going through rip and replace. That's something that hasn't been, the law's been passed, but the money has not yet been appropriated. And they just came back with an estimate the other day that that's going to be $2 billion. And that's just for the local little telecoms that have provided responses to them. And my understanding is many more have not. What's the risk to all of those, and what's the cost to us as Americans in the loss of innovation when all these companies are having to go back and solve this problem for themselves. So we would really like to see clarity around a risk-focused approach that understands that these are complex issues, that the need to protect national security is real, but at the same time, there's a desire to encourage innovation and competition in the marketplace and for government.
30 seconds left, Gordon. What comes next? What will you watch?
I think in the immediate term, it's going to be to see how does the FAR Council respond to the comments that came back on 889. But then immediately following that, the Secure Technologies Act rule was just published as well. It's very much in the same space. It creates the Federal Acquisition Security Council to do a lot of the risk analysis that I was just talking about. And what we'd really like to see is some overall heuristic that takes into account the needs of all of these policies and gives consistent guidance.
Gordon Bitko, thanks very much. It's great to have you back.
Thanks again, Francis.